In the 1920s, America was at a peak. After the economic slump of World War II in 1918, America developed rapidly in industry and flourished in cultural aspects. It was a time when Americans worked hard and played harder, just hard enough for this incredible era to be named the Roaring Twenties. In the 1920s, the cultural diversity of Americans changed with the conflicts associated with Prohibition, which divided Americans according to their religious beliefs, century practices, and residential patterns. According to the provisions of the 18th Amendment to the Constitution on January 16, 1920, Protestant moralists viewed this ban as a progressive reform that would root out the sins associated with alcohol consumption. Urban areas with large immigrant populations resisted the liquor ban openly. Illegal speakeasies, replaced salons, appealed more to middle and upper-class clients than workers. In 1920, President Wilson proposed the League of Nations to help prevent future wars, but few Americans were interested. President Wilson had told Americans that World War I has been the war to end wars. However, Americans had little desire to be drawn into another conflict in Europe. When the League of Nations met for the first time in January 1920, representatives from 42 nations were there. President Wilson submitted the treaty to the Senate confident that he could persuade enough of its members to vote for ratification. The treaty was ultimately rejected. In 1920, women get the right to vote with the ratification of the 19th Amendment to the Constitution on August the 18th. 26 million women were enfranchised, and a battle for women's suffrage that began at the Seneca Falls Women's Rights Convention in 1848 finally has won. Having won the right to vote, feminists now sought to bring out the equality of sexes. First, women did not vote in blocks or uniformly support women's issues. They voted according to race, social class, religious background, and geographic location. The moderate League of Women Voters attracted many women who wanted social reforms and education for women. In 1920, a man named Earl Dickens invented an item so important that almost every family in America keeps several in their medicine cabinet. He got the idea for this item when he realized his wife frequently hurt herself while working around the house. Each time she had to take a piece of cotton and place it over the wand and hold it in place with tape. It dawned on him to place a small layer of cotton in the middle of a piece of tape, then put stiff linen over the sticky part to keep it from losing its glue. In 1920, the radio became a popular item. The development of radio and radio broadcasting caught the public fancy. In 1920, KDKA in Pittsburgh became the first radio station to enter commercial broadcasting. First, the radio was primarily envisioned as a means for conveying news and other general information. In the late 20s, radio networks had become major competitors with daily newspapers for advertising. In 1921, the first Miss America pageant was held in Atlantic City to promote tourism. The 16-year-old Margaret Gorman, who just won the Washington, D.C. pageant, went to Atlantic City for Intercity Beauty Contest. Undoubtedly, personality played a large role in the voting as masses of people surrounded each entrant to get to know her better and throw questions at them throughout the event. Thus Margaret, not knowing what she was going to achieve, was honored the first Miss America. In the early 1920s, the Surrealism movement began. It is a culture movement best known for the visual artworks and writings of the group members. Surrealist works featured the element of surprise. From the 1920s onward, the movement hit America. It eventually affected the visual arts, literature, film, and music, as well as political thought and practice. Philosophy and Social Theory of Modern America. In the 1920s, American women fought hard for their rights and social roles. Before then, abortion was considered to be immoral and was absolutely banned in social terms. In 1921, Margaret Sanger founded the American Birth Control League, providing women with information about birth control. Margaret envisioned the use of a birth control pill even back then, but was unable to get funding and follow through the project until the early 1950s. In 1922, the introduction of commercial brands of peanut butter, such as Peter Pan and Skippy, brought up the popularity of peanut butter. Peanut butter and jelly sandwich became a popular meal, especially among the under 12 age group. It was the most asked for sandwich in the 1920s, and even today, average Americans will have eaten 1,500 of these sandwiches before graduating from high school. Starting from 1923, many Americans seem to be determined to dance till they drop. Dance marathons were held all over the country, setting a motivation of winning cash prizes for the winning couple who could dance the longest. Couples would struggle to dance hours after hours, often day after day. Partners would fall asleep and the other would have to carry the sleeping one and keep on dancing. One by one, people collapsed until one last couple would crawl or stagger to collect the prize. During this time, the longest dance record was set by June Curry in Cleveland in 1923 with 90 hours of continuous dancing. In 1924, the Ku Klux Klan numbered more than 100,000 members and had a lot of money. Throughout the 1920s, the KKK expanded the most because of advertising made by hired publicists. It also became more strident. It articulated opposition to niggers, Catholics, Jews, bootlegging, graft, nightclubs, and roadhouses. In 1925, Charlie Chaplin made his debut in Gold Rush that was shown in Hollywood Cinema House. In the 1920s, Al Gabriel Capone led the gangsters of the Prohibition era. On September 20th, 1926, Al Capone was almost shot when eating at the restaurant. Later in a time, in 1929, he ordered the most notorious gangland killing, St. Valentine's Day Massacre in the Lincoln Park neighborhood in Chicago. On May 20th, 1927, Charles Lindbergh started the engine of Spirit of St. Louis from Roosevelt Field, Long Island, and moved towards the Atlantic Ocean to Paris, France. In 1927, Henry Ford's Ford Motor Company started to produce the Ford Model A, replacing the Ford Model T. From then, Ford became a good developing American company that uses mass production system which is very successful. It gained the trust of American people and provided millions of jobs. By the end of the 1920s, colored movies came into view. On May the 16th, 1929, at the private dinner held at Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel in Los Angeles, the first Academy Awards ceremony had place. It was a party for around 250 people. Winners were announced 3 months before the ceremony, and the first person to receive an Academy Award was Emil Jannings. October the 24th, 1929, the most devastating stock market crash on New York Stock Exchange took place. $4 billion were lost, whipping thousands of investigators, and the machinery could not handle the colossal volume of trading. This day was named the Black Thursday.